These are the four things I thought I will focus on. That is the careers. What is the future looking like? Because what we are preparing the students for, or the student for the purpose that they are studying for, is for the future. The new age engineering programs that we are talking about and what we are offering, and eventually a little bit about the university, because that's something that has to naturally happen. But I will try and keep the focus on the topic of today's session, that is careers and engineering and so on, and that's what my intention is. So the first thing about careers. So the basic question is, are we ready for the era of globalization 3.0? And what is globalization 3.0? We have all heard the word globalization, and I think it's a very commonly used word. Every day you read it in the newspapers, you hear it on TV. But what is this 3.0? So actually the actual globalization started, so to say, from 1400s till about the First World War. It was at that time the world actually shrank from being large to medium. That was the time when countries were trying to invade other countries and actually rule over those countries. So you had Britain invading India, for example, and ruling here. Spanish Armada going to Latin America and trying to rule the countries over there, and so on. Globalization 2.0 started from about World War II to the year 2000. That was the time when companies actually started spreading globally. When companies started operations from the country of their origin to other countries. So there would be a country like there will be a company like Pepsi or Coca-Cola or IBM's. All these companies, they started their businesses in the country of origin and then expanded that business into other countries. That still goes on. And most of the time what we think of globalization is that companies are coming to other countries and companies from our country going to other countries and doing business over there. And at that time the world shrank from medium to small. And the third era, or the globalization 3.0, is the globalization of individual. Because today we know that a lot of people are working across the globe. A lot of Indians we know are going different parts of the world working there. If you go in Koregaon Park, or we even see in this building, and if you stand out when the offices are going closing time, at that time you will realize that a lot of foreigners are now working in our country as well. So there is no geographical divide for people to work. People, they find work wherever the work calls them, they go there and they start working over there. So that divide has also been breached, and the world has now gone from small to tiny. Yesterday, because of the communication technologies that are available, because of movement and mobility of people, people are to be found in every corner of the world. Things like WhatsApp and things, you can connect you with your near and dear ones at a click. I mean, I have income tax return to file. My cousin used to do it. He has now migrated to Canada. So I wrote to him, do you know anybody who can help me since you will not be here? He said, what's the problem? I'll do it from there. And he is helping me, and if I have issue, I have a WhatsApp. Of course, email is there. So if anything, he does the things online from there, and my job is still not hampered. And the fellow is actually miles of distance away from us. So that's what the globalization 3.0 is, and the question is, are we ready for that? Because while the world is changing around us, the thing is, are we changing with the world? Are we at the same standpoint where we are, and are we not considering these changes? In today's time, the Me Too is out, because everybody is Me Too, even the products, and so as the products, it's the people also. as so are the qualifications. If the qualifications, the people, they are me too, then nobody is actually interested, because the issue is if either you are interesting or you become invisible. So the choice is up to you, choice is up to the students, choice is up to the parent, what is there to be aspired for. The aspiration is to be invisible or aspiration is to be interesting. Because interesting is something which that anybody would like to be. And how to be interesting? Interesting doesn't mean, there was a boy who was in a college and he realized one day that nobody looks at me, and so he decided, okay, one day he shaved off all the hair from his head. Not only he did that, he also shaved off his eyebrows and went to the college. So people looked at him. But do you want to look interesting that way? Because you are a clown. So being a clown is not the objective to look interesting. To be interesting means you have to be having something which is different than the other, which sets you apart from the others. As we all know, the 19th century was an industrial age. Industrial age was the time when people from the agriculture came to work in the industrial scenario. At that time, farmers, laborers, artisans, they were brought into the system. They were brought in to become factory workers. Now imagine a farmer, an artisan, or a laborer who has never worked under anybody's command. He has never followed any pattern. He has never followed any time. He just did, being his own field. He went to the field at the time when he felt it was right. He did the job. He came back home. He ate at the time that he felt hungry. He used to either would carry something to eat, or his wife or some family member would get that thing. He would eat at the time that he would like to. So they were all free-minded people. All of a sudden, you had a factory setting where there are 200, 300, 400 people. And imagine if each one of them started behaving independently, what is going to happen? It's not going to work, because in a factory scenario, things are related with each other, they are interrelated. As a result of which, in the industrial age, all the systems and processes that were made in such a way that you stop thinking and you start following instruction. That is how the entire management theory came about. That's how the entire factory environment came about. But that was the need of the hour. And maybe even today in certain factory environments, that still might be the need of the hour. But in today's time, when the things have changed, things have moved from volume to value. The technologies that are available now make it possible for you to do things at your own pace and time in a lot of places, not all places. For example, in a bank, you cannot do it that way. In a bank, everybody will have to be at the same time. If the cashier says tomorrow I will dispense cash at the time that I feel that is right, it may not work. But again, there also you have ATM. I don't know how many people now actually go to the bank to actually withdraw money. Earlier days, you would go to the bank, you would write a self-check, then get a token and wait for the number, and then the number would come. Then you would say, no, I have only 100 rupees note. You will say, no, give me 10 rupee note. You will haggle and you will get something. So your own money to get it needed what? About 45 minutes? Besides the trip to the bank and coming back and that commute time. Today you actually insert your card on the way, on the go, anywhere. Now there is mobile banking and all that thing coming up. See the way the things have changed around us. So the rules of the game have changed from volume to value. What is the value proposition that is being offered is the question. In about 1878, if I am not mistaken, Thomas Edison actually sang Mary Had a Little Lamb, and the sound came back to him. That was the time the music industry was born. That was the time when the audio industry was born. It took 100 years for that industry to proliferate. In 2004, again if I'm not mistaken, a guy called Sean, who's a computer engineering graduate at Stanford, comes up with this idea of Napster, where you could actually download music on your own personal computer. How much time did it take to proliferate? Not more than 2 months. It was eventually shut down and all that. That's a different story altogether. I'm not going into the apples of the world because that's all well known, so I'm not going to talk about that. But this is the way things have moved, because they move from volume to value. Earlier you were talking of production, you're talking of technology. If I have technology, the technology is not there with anybody, and there I had a certain advantage. Now technology is available with more or less everybody. We all know that even the terrorists have the nuclear bomb. So where is the limit now? The technology has become so pervasive that it's available with anyone and everyone. People can make bombs, people can make devices, people can make things as they please. So what is the issue? The issue is whether we are offering a certain value proposition besides the product or the service that is being offered. So this is you, the students, and maybe their parents cloning to be the students. The question is, what kind of a career that you would want? Is it a static career where you get into the job and you serve there 40 years and come out, or a dynamic one, a local or a global, something that gives you stress or something that is fun? You would like to follow or you would like to lead? Of course, everybody wants to make money, no harm in expecting that. But basically, we want a career. Each one of us aspires, at least aspires. Eventually, one gets it or not is a different story. But each one of us aspires for a career that is fun, that is exciting, creative, and rewarding. Here, it is also important to note what is a career. There is a difference between a career and a job. Getting a job is easy, because you can always, there are several kinds of jobs now, new occupations that have come about, and it's very easy to get a job comparatively. But does those jobs give you a career? A career means a path wherein you can, as building blocks, move up in the value chain. Do you have that option? Because there are a lot of programs that are being offered today that offer a job, right? But do those program options provide for a pathway to look at a career from a longer point of view, longer term point of view? That is the larger question. And the answer to all of these questions is education. We all know that. I don't think there is any dispute in this thought that education is the most powerful weapon that is available. Specifically, all of us, I am sure, we belong to the middle class backgrounds, and for us the only way out or only ladder to climb up, unless we were to join a mafia or to join hands with Dawood or become a politician or become a spiritual guru, except for these three things, if we have to earnestly go and go up in a ladder, education is the only way. Other three professions, actually education is a disqualification. So choosing a career. Now most of the people will tell you this. Now, this is standard. This is Lok Satta will print it, Sakal will print it, Times of India will print it. What are you interested in? Arey Baba, I don't know what I am interested in. What are you good at? If I knew what I was good at, why am I reading what you are saying to me? I mean, this is all like, okay, you have to be a good boy, you have to be a good girl, follow the instruction given by your parents. Don't do this, don't do that, don't go after girls, don't go after boys, don't watch movies, don't do this. That is all that kind of career advices that are floating around. And I decided today that I'm not going to talk about that, because basically career is something that everybody will give you free advice, and everybody's advice will be different. So I'm not going to give any kind of a career advice that this career is good, that career is bad, because I am a firm believer that every occupation, every qualification, you can rise up and lead. Look at, let us say, economics. You have a prime minister who actually became a prime minister on the strength of him being an economist. You may not like the persona, or you may like, that's your personal choice, but the fact remains that on the basis of that qualification, he rose on to become the prime minister of India. You have the RBI governor, there are several such occupations that are there, and people have made good progress in their life. They have reached the pinnacle. They have been known nationally, and not only nationally, internationally. So there is no career that is bad, right? So that is up to you, what you want to do, what you feel is right. And today's time fortunately gives that cushion. And the earlier good old days, maybe there were limitations, information was short, people were not aware of what to do, and that's why choosing a career was that much more difficult. But today, I think information is available about everything. You can read through it, you can digest it, and if you come across it as something good to give it a try, might as well give it a try. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. I mean, you can always change course. And at the age, unless you have failed till 12th exam or something, but at that age of 17, I guess, and I would suggest that you always have that 1 or 2 years of experimentation possibility that is there. I don't see that why there should be such a premium on getting things right the first time. It is, sometimes it may happen, sometimes it may not happen. When you get into it, you don't like it, you say, okay, I'm not liking it, I'm moving into something else. So career advice is something that I am saying that you have to believe in what you want to do and go for it, experiment with it, and go on with it. There is also one sentiment that often, especially if this is for the parents, when the son or the daughter comes up and says, oh, I want to do this, parents look at it and they are not very convinced, but they know the boy or the girl is now grown up, so saying no is not going to serve any much reasoning with him or her. Then what they say, it's good, but why don't you do a graduation in this, and after that we will see, we have more time. That's the bad advice I would very humbly suggest, because that means that the boy or the girl is going to do something for that 3 or 4 years in what they don't believe in, and that's a waste of those 3 or 4 years. So instead, it's better to focus on that and go into that area right at the beginning, once you have determined that you want to go into that area. And in today's time, the career, as I said, they are not anymore stable, linear and singular. It's a fallacy that you get into a career, and I'm not talking of a job, I'm talking of a career. So I'm not saying that you got into one job and you remained in that job forever. I am also not saying that you got into a particular career and you remained in that by just changing jobs. Careers are evolving, and there are a lot of careers which have not even been invented as we speak. But by the time you are going to graduate from your first degree, they might just come somewhere, and which you have never thought about. In the changing economy, what is important and pertinent to note, I will be going into a little more detail on this. Routine, manual jobs, routine thinking jobs are out. They are on the decline. And why they are on the decline, I will discuss, but it's basically because of automation. What is on the rise is jobs which are complex, which need creativity and creative thinking. That is what is on the rise. And we have to embrace change. Even Bollywood has changed, In the early good old days, when they would show a romance between a hero and a heroine, they would show those two flowers. And now what all they show, we all know. So romance have changed in Bollywood. Live-in relationships are rampant in Bollywood. The kind of movies, Mother India, Roti Kapda or Makan, to movies like what Kya Cool Hai Hum and all that. So that's what has changed. I'm not saying anything is bad, but that's how, because movies are a reflection of our society. And people make movies because society likes them. And if the society is liking them, that means the society is thinking that way. So if there's so much of change that has happened in front of our eyes, even the kind of movies that we watch, even the kind of serials that we watch, technology has played a great role in the Hindi movies. So you have, imagine right from Mr. India, it was one of the first technologically advanced movies that came about, to Ravan or Koi Mil Gaya and these kind of movies. So technology is now playing a huge role in the movies. And in case of change, the issue is not about predicting it, but it is about, can we anticipate it? Prediction is, we are not astrologers to predict. There is no kundali of technology that you will take it to somebody and show it and say, okay, bhaiya ye kya hoga iska, kind of a thing. There is no such thing. So you can anticipate. And there is nothing foolproof, because an unexpected event, a totally unexpected event, might drive a particular business totally out of the window. Just see the Olas and the Uber. I don't know how many of you took a Ola or an Uber, but now most of the people I know, in my own house, my wife takes an Uber every day in the morning and while coming from the office, and we calculated. So her office distance and my house to office, it costs by Uber a monthly 24 working days 6,000 rupees. You own a car, you pay the EMI more than that, and leave aside the petrol, diesel and maintenance and all those things. Now it has completely transformed the way transportation happens, and it will increase. It will increase, and professions like rickshaw driver may become extinct. Who knows? So the point is not to predict the future, but to prepare for it. And perhaps, because especially at this young age, and when you are at the onset of a career, to predict it. Can you predict it? And if you could predict it, can you anticipate it, not predict it? Can you prepare for it, and can you try and shape it? It's not as difficult, or it's not as bad as I am saying that there's so much changing. Oh my God, what can I do now? It's all gone. I don't know what is to be done. So you have to just imagine, believe, and you will be able to achieve. It's not difficult. It's only about your own application. So a little bit about the future. Most of the time about the future, we are in the state of denial. It is happening in front of us, but we say no, it's not going to go anywhere, it's not going to happen. Look at this guy from IBM. 1943, he said there's a market for maximum 5 computers. And imagine today your own life without a computer. Or this guy Peter Duisberg, who said, oh, the HIV virus is a pussycat, it doesn't mean anything, it's not consequential. The entire world's health, one of the major challenges is the HIV virus, and governments and agencies, everybody is fighting for it and trying to find what is to be done about that. Not so much behind, but just in 1967, somebody says that the role of women is not going to be significant. And today we all know that there is no option. Actually, the role of women is now becoming more than equal. So that's what, we cannot remain in the state of denial. We have to see what is going to come up and how are we going to respond to it. Look at just a few global mega trends I have listed, because that was not the topic for today, but I still thought that I'll give you a flavor of that. We all know of globalization, we talked a bit about that. Climate change is a major issue, and there is a huge role for technology and technology-led solutions when it comes to these global megatrends. So it's not about just knowing about the global megatrend, but each one of these trends is an opportunity space. It's an opportunity for somebody to do something in each of these areas and then come up winner. Urbanization in India, we already have, you must have all heard about the smart city scheme and all these things, because urbanization is a major issue that is facing all the governments. Tertiarization, yeah, again the jobs, they were primary from agriculture, they moved to the industrial, and now they are moving to tertiary sector. What is tertiarization? Is actually the tertiary sectors are either there is a huge service sector, service economy sector which have come up, which is actually in India the economy, the service economy is larger than the manufacturing economy. India is the only economy in the world, may not be only but nearly only economy in the world where the economy is led by services and not manufacturing. Most of the countries actually grew up on manufacturing and then added services to the whole kitty, but in India it's been the other way around. It's been the services which have led the whole show, and manufacturing, now the government realized, opened its eyes, oh my god, services we cannot continue, we have to have manufacturing also, and that's where the focus of manufacturing and these programs like Make in India and these things are starting to happen. So in the tertiary sector, services is one, and services sector mostly is accommodating people who are not so well endowed in terms of qualification. So you have call centers, you have retail, you have all these sectors which are service sectors which are providing jobs, but they are not of the high order. And the other end in the tertiary sector job is high value adding jobs, which are where you go into that job with high amount of creativity, high amount of ingenuity, high amount of technology understanding, and that's where you actually fit in. In between these two extremes of services and the manufacturing kind of job which are high value, the in between space of the kind of assembly line jobs or quality control jobs and those kind of jobs is fast diminishing. We also don't know where will the next internet come from. Internet was a great addition of our present century, and it led us to the stage that we are here today. So where the new thing will come from, we don't know. There is intelligence augmentation, areas like that. Like my son is so fond of ice cream, and I have to stock ice cream, but I also have to ensure that he doesn't eat all the ice cream in a day. So my fridge has to be intelligent enough to ensure that the amount of ice cream that my son is eating when I am not in the house is controlled. And that's what is intelligent augmentation. Something like quantum computing. Computers, we all know, are based on the binary logic of digits and things like that. Now they are talking of a computer based on the logic of something called as qubits. So that's the kind of development. Quantum computing is still in its very early stages, but you never know when that breakthrough will happen, when that new industry will get born out of this whole thing. Virtual reality, robotics, all these areas are anti-aging, because people are now aware that how they want to live more. This has been an expectation since ages. Everybody, even there are there is this serial going on Zee TV, Nagin, where this woman is wanting that Nagmuni to remain alive all her life and not to age. So right from fantasy to reality, everybody is wanting to not age. Automation is going to be the biggest challenge, and basically that's what I was talking about, that automation, we have to ensure that what are the jobs that are not going to be replaced by the computers. Because most of the jobs that we know of today, most of them, there are now restaurants where service is happening by robots. There are already such places. There are already, like we talked about the bank ATM, the job of the teller in a bank is gone. There are several of these jobs which are being replaced by computers. So the competition is with the computer. And you have to, when you think of a career, when you think of your future, you have to choose something where you are not competing with the computer. Because if you are competing with the computer, you are bound to lose. And where can a computer cannot compete with you? A computer cannot compete with you when it requires thinking abilities. A computer will always beat you where the job profile is linear, where the job profile is about doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again. Every such job which is repetitive in nature will be gone. 5 years it will be gone. Computers will take over. Even factories. Factories today in India or even abroad, most of the factories now are automated. There is what they call as the third industrial revolution, which is of automation, and because of the automation the factory jobs are being automated. Now factories are moving back to US. A lot of factories which were producing in China now have gone back to US, because factories had two issues. Why they moved to China? There were two issues. One was the cost of energy, and second was the cost of manpower. US found shale gas, so cost of energy has gone down. US found automation, cost of manpower gone down. They don't need to go to China anymore. Those who are there, but most of the guys are now going back. General Electric already had made announcement to that effect. Lots of other American companies are making announcements. Europe is the same. So you are not, again, the manufacturing, the factory jobs may not again exist the way they existed before, because of this whole automation thing. And any curriculum that emphasizes following direction is something which is taking you down the doomsday, because you will be prepared like a computer. You will have to compete with a computer, and that's a competition you will not be able to win. Just about 14 years from now, this is what the predictions are. This is how the things will move. That's what is expected. Things like synthetic bacteria, childcare robots, holographic TV, all these things are going to come up. And these are technologies already in some state of preparation, some state of demonstration, some state of experimentation. So what are the new age engineering careers? That's what the third thing is. I guess I am doing all right in terms of time. So the future jobs will be created as new knowledge gets created. It's directly proportional to new knowledge. And we all know that knowledge is coming across at the fastest clip possible. Average person in a career will have 10 or more jobs, that's a prediction. And every job you might change what you were doing earlier. So if you take a work span of 40 years for anybody, if you start working at the age of 22, 23 and go on till say 60 or 65, then you are at an average changing a job and an occupation at every 5 years. One, because the old jobs are becoming extinct. Another, because you are getting new opportunities. Either of the two reasons. If you are good, you will get new opportunities. If you are not good with the job which is becoming extinct, you might become jobless. And that's why the real value of higher education is to prepare students for career possibilities that they cannot imagine. Because we don't know, but we have to yet prepare for it. So, about engineering a bit, there is a lot of misconception about engineering that we all have. And engineering is thought to be like, oh, he's a mechanical engineer, but he cannot repair a two-wheeler. Oh, he's an electrical engineer, he cannot do the wiring of the house. But that's not his job. None of us ever actually get back and think, a job of an electrical engineer, a job of a mechanical engineer is not to repair an automobile, it's not to repair the wiring of the house. That's a job of an electrician, that's a job of a mechanic. There's a difference between things called technology and things called engineering. There's a huge difference. And unless we realize that, we will not be able to understand the complete value of engineering. Because engineers, they create something that never existed, they work under the constraints, and they imagine a situation within those constraints and come up with a solution for that. And that's why design is also creativity under constraints. Engineering is equal to design, and design means what? Design means simply to create something that never existed, to change a existing situation, a present situation, into a preferred one. This room, for example, there must be just a land some years back. Somebody thought, okay, there has to be a building, so they changed an existing situation into a preferred one. Then the building got made, the MCCI got it, and they said, okay, we have to make it available to our members for holding conferences, holding meetings. So they created this room. So there was an existing situation which was changed into a preferred one to meet a particular objective. Design defines engineering. It's an engineer's job to create new things to improve society, and it's university's obligation to give students fundamental education in design, because design is about imagining, design is about creating, and engineering is equal to design, and engineering is equal to imagination, because you cannot design unless you have imagination. And if the imagination is killed at the time of your education, which they certainly do by the time you are done with your 12th, and you further kill it when you are in your graduate school, you are done. So I am going to talk about two areas, that is mechatronics and biomedical engineering, and first to begin with the mechatronics. So mechatronics is an area, is actually an amalgam of mechanical, electronic and control system. All this put together, that's what becomes mechatronics. It has mechanics, electronics, software, control, everything. Just look at an automotive system. If you look at an average vehicle on the road, most of them have these things, and each of these things are a result of mechatronic application of engineering. Automotive industry is itself transiting. They're moving from gasoline to hybrid, mechanical connection to drive-by-wire, adoption and implementation of IT standards in technology of the car, on-demand to always-on vehicle connectivity to internet. All these things are happening, and this is all the domain of mechatronics. Just look at a car. The drive-by-wire actually has replaced mechanical connections. Push rod, rack and pinion, steering column, they are all controlled by mechatronic systems. Robotics is the ultimate mechatronic system. We interact with computers. In 1970s or 80s, the amount of our interaction with computer was limited. In 30 years time, the amount of our interaction with computer has become almost pervasive. We touch a computer, and without even realizing the mobile phones in our hand, the smartphone, they are a computer in itself. So computers have become an integral part of our life, and so the same is going to happen when it comes to robotics. It's the next frontier after computers. Some of the applications of mechatronics engineering, something like this micro factory, where it's a desktop size factory where you can build small parts and you can do it quickly. CNC machines, of course, high speed trains, or the things like personal transportation devices like the Segway. And there are a lot of these, unfortunately the inventor of Segway died in the Segway accident itself. That's another story. But robotic application like this robo, that is big dog, it can actually carry 150 kgs, run at the speed of 7 kilometers per hour, replaces manual labor. at construction sites, in difficult terrains, and so on. Vacuum floors, robots. Now you have this, I don't know if you've seen this thing called Roomba. It's available, I think Chroma store, if you go there, they might have it. There are these vacuum robots which actually goes and and it automatically actually cleans the floors. I mean, you had vacuum cleaners, but you had to take them and do this. Now you don't even have to do that. There are these, and it's very, very cheap. It's not very expensive. This Roomba is not very expensive. You have all heard about the Mars mission. The Mars rover is a mechatronic application or unmanned aerial vehicle, because now they are talking of soldiers or unmanned aerial vehicles so that there is no collateral damage of people's life when it comes to defense application. So they are now saying, okay, there will be robotic soldiers who would be there. Just 2-3 days back, there was a news that on the Indo-Pak border they have these laser walls now to prevent infiltration, because it is impossible to construct a physical wall because of the terrain. So they have the laser walls. Anytime there is an infiltration, there is an entire control system which tells you there is an infiltration. So that's the kind of different applications. There are several career paths, and I would say that the career paths that mechatronics engineering offers actually is slightly better than the traditional mechanical or electronic engineering. I'm not going to compare here saying this is good or this is bad, or this is as I have already made the statement that everything is good. But here the thing is, mechatronics is the future. It's the application of the principles of mechanical and electronics engineering put together to run devices of the present century and maybe the next century. And that's what makes mechatronics that much more powerful, or something with an additional advantage over the traditional mechanical or electronic engineering. I must also add a disclaimer over here, that this is not possible for an average person, so to say, because all these applications that I showed are some things which will require high amount of creativity, high amount of ingenuity, and that is what has to be there. And mind it, that it's not about you having these qualities by birth, but it is about the institution actually working with you to facilitate these qualities through your program implementation, through your program engagement, and that's what we do. The second part, that is the biomedical engineering, again it's a combination of biological sciences, engineering and medicine. It is concerned with the prognosis. Prognosis means early detection or prevention kind of things, diagnosis, monitoring and treatment of the sick. And unfortunately in India, most of the biomedical engineering programs that were or that are, they mostly concern, or that's also the public perception, that biomedical is concerned only with biomedical instrumentation. That is, the instruments that you see besides the patient or the ones that are used by doctors are the domain of biomedical engineering. It's not. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Biomedical is actually concerned with several of these areas, such as medical devices, biosensors, instrumentation, bioimaging, computational vision, and so on and so forth. Devices which are inside the body to cure you or to diagnose things, or devices that are outside the body to support you, and so on. Like some of the applications are like prosthetics. A lot of people who unfortunately either meet with an accident or due to some illness there is an amputation or something like that. For them to lead a healthy, regular life, there is technology now available. You might have heard the story of the Shaktiman. It was on the news, and also the sub story during that thing. There was a guy who actually flew in with a prosthetic leg for this horse, so that the horse could actually stand on his own 4 feet. And that's the power of biomedical applications. That's outside the body. This is inside the body. There are pacemakers that we might have heard. There is implantable defibrillation devices. Things like running shoes. Now, all the shoe companies, you must have been seeing their advertisement that they help you run better. Why athletes prefer a Nike or a Adidas or a Puma besides the average running shoes that you buy in the store. But it's a biomedical application where you actually come up with a design of a shoe which allows these things to happen. There are applications like artificial heart. There are applications in operation theaters or medical imaging and things like that. There are a lot of future development that are happening in this area because this is a sunrise area. So it's not as well developed as perhaps the mechatronic systems area is, but it's a sunrise area where we are talking about programmed electrical stimulation of muscles to enable movement, implanted sensors, artificial organs. Even they are talking of artificial heart, they are talking of cloning. All these things, as I said, they are at various stages of development and they would actually come into existence very, very soon. Career paths are again in the area of medical engineering companies, hospitals, pharma companies, medical research institutions. And take it from me that when it comes to health, everybody makes the investment. Nobody that you know of, can you just imagine anybody who had a health situation in family and you never made that investment that was required? Whatever source you could get from, you will make that investment in this. And this investment is made because it's directly related with the well-being of ourselves as well as our families or the ones whom we love. And that's why this is an industry which has huge size, and this size will grow because the threats to our health and well-being are also growing at the same pace as much as the technology solutions are. When the world actually got rid of TB and they got rid of polio, they all of a sudden discovered that there was a bigger animal called HIV. They all of a sudden discovered that there is a bigger animal called Alzheimer's, and they are still trying to find a cure and solutions for these people. So the last part, towards the last part of the thing, engineering education at our university. So we have actually created a specific approach called innovative engineering for delivering a different kind, a radically different engineering education, because we realize that the engineering education, the way it is delivered today, is actually creating clones of computers that against which I talked about. And that's why the innovative engineering approach focuses on three major areas. That is, one is design, which I talked about, that design is engineering and engineering is design. Design for whom? Design for people, and that's why people focused engineering, because unless you take people into account, unless you are understanding the needs, desire, expression, aspirations of the people for whom you are making the solution, how will you make a solution? So people focused engineering. And thirdly, entrepreneurship and innovation. Entrepreneurship, because you may not actually, entrepreneurship does not necessarily mean that you're going out and starting a business of your own. Entrepreneurship could also mean that thinking on your own, you can still work for a company but still be an entrepreneur. The syllabi that we have, instead of reinventing the wheel and saying, oh, my syllabus is better than yours or my shirt is better than yours kind of a thing, we follow the internationally benchmark standard given by Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology USA, and that is, we consider US engineering education system to be the best in the world. We follow the Abbott standard, as a result of which the teaching approach that we follow is what we proudly call as conceive, design, implement and operate, that CDIO. Again, this is not our invention. It's actually developed by these three great institutions, two in Sweden and one in US. It is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Chalmers University, and Linköping University. Linköping and Chalmers is in Sweden. But interestingly, CDIO approach, if you just do a Google on CDIO, and you will find that more than 200 universities around the world actually follow this approach. And it's about conceiving, designing, implement, and operate the entire life cycle of a system. Either it's a product, system, or a combination of both. So you start with what it is going to be to how it is going to be disposed. So last part, and it's 51 minutes, we have about 9 minutes to go. So this is the campus, of course, and of course after it rains, not now. So if you climb a hill and try to see any green, you may not see it. So, but it, and as the builders like to say, actual site photograph. So this is actual site photograph taken by one of my students. It's a campus which was inaugurated by Honorable President in the year 2012. There's a few glimpses. It's called the D.Y. Patil Knowledge City. It's a 110-acre campus, and at present we have about 7,000 students, 500 plus faculty members, and about 300 plus admin staff on the campus. Needless to say, these things, and these are essentials, but I'm just talking about that. But the university, we are proud to say that it's not any other university, but it's an innovation university, because the focus, the DNA of the university is innovation, and that's what is the key attribute of the university. Our motto is world class, nothing but the best. We focus on learning by doing, or focus on to do. Most of the curriculums, they focus on the bottom two, that is knowledge comprehension. Somewhat they address the application issue, but in our curriculums we focus on analysis, synthesis, and judgment, and that's the higher order. The student to faculty ratio, we are proud to say that we try and maintain a 10:1 student to faculty ratio. Our class sizes are very small. In fact, engineering class size, the two proposed program, biomedical and mechatronic engineering, the class size is 30 only. We don't want 31, because we believe that if the class size is small, there are faculty, then that personal interaction and the quality of interaction itself determines the quality of education that is provided. On one hand you say I will give you quality, and on another hand you have 100 kids in one class, it's not going to work. We have a buffet system in a way, so that you can actually design your own curriculum in a way. The students have choices, they can make choices. So a student from engineering can take, for example, a course from film school, and if the student is interested in making films, and he can take 2 credits from the film school, no harm done, and it's part of the coursework. Somebody from film school wants to know about IP laws, and he could go to the School of Law and take up a few credits on IP laws. And that's the kind of flexibility, that's the kind of flexible curriculum which I think differentiates us from others. And this differentiation is important because students' interest, while the student might be interested in a particular discipline for which the student has taken the admission, but the student might at the same time have other interests, and why should those other interests be killed? So normally you have the option, okay, you do this or you do that, but here you have the option of doing the focus area and also alongside that discover and explore areas which interests you, which you find useful in your future, which might help you in your main focus area as well. As I said, a film production student might be interested in IP laws because tomorrow he might need those. This is often a question, and perhaps unfortunately nowadays this is the first question that gets asked, that what about placement? Oh, बाकी सब ठीक है साहब, प्लेसमेंट वेसमेंट देते हो कि नहीं देते हो, मेरे नौकरी मिलेगी कि नहीं मिलेगी, एंड दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग. एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम पीपल विल कॉन्फिडेंटली ऑन द अदर साइड रिप्लाई, हाँ देते हैं, वो मिल जाएगा, बहुत अच्छा है, ये है वो है, ऑल दैट. सो I will just revert to what earlier I said, that every job has equal potential, every job has equal opportunity. As university, our job is to facilitate these things, and we do facilitate. We have something called as Innovation Factory, which is a very special platform where we actually bring the industry and the students together to solve complex problems of the industry in a multidisciplinary manner. Most of the time what happens is an industry problem comes, one set of students actually address that. That problem may not be addressed by one set, one discipline. Today's problems are problems which need application of different disciplines to that problem. So for example, this company called Polycom, they came to us. They are a world's leading video conferencing solution providers. And they came to us and they said, look, we want you to imagine the next generation video conferencing experience for us. And our students from different disciplines, from product design, from management, from other areas, they all came together and actually created scenarios for Polycom of what the next generation video conferencing experience would be like. Bayer is one of the world's largest material companies. It's a German headquartered company. They came to us. They said, okay, look, we have this material and our scientists have invented this material, but we don't know what is to be done with this material. What are the possible applications of this material? So again, actually it was a reverse way. Most of the time people will come, okay, make this for me, do this for me, and so on. But here it was a different challenge posed to us, so we worked on it, and our students actually came up with 16 applications of the material that was provided by Bayer. And Bayer today is actually selling that particular material by citing these 16 applications. We did a pickup truck for Tata Motors for the Thailand and Australian markets. Our kids actually competed along with the Tata Motors own design team based in here in Pune, as well as their design studio in UK, and the proposal from one of our students got accepted, and that pickup truck is going into production in 2019. Automotive production programs are actually 5 years long, so that's why actually we did that project in 2014. So 2019 that pickup truck goes into production. GM, we did the next version of Chevrolet, and it didn't go anywhere because production cars rarely happen, but we did a Chevrolet for GM and so on. So there are several such stories, placements and internships. There are a lot of, I can have actually 10-15 slides with different logos, but that the idea is just to give you a glimpse of it. Lot of our students have become entrepreneurs. So this Max Speed Design, he got a job with Lumax in Chennai. He checked that job in 6 months and he's now making bikes. This guy Modster is again in Chennai, and you can just go on Facebook and look for Modsters and you will see what kind of wonderful work he is doing. And there's so many such students who are actually doing things on their own. We have a 360-degree approach to education because we feel that education is not only about giving you knowledge of the discipline for which you have enrolled, but basically to make you a complete person. And that's why we believe in this thought process called T-shaped professional, where the vertical of the T defines the discipline that you are enrolling for. It could be engineering, it could be law, it could be media, it could be design, whatever. But unless you have the breadth of life, unless you have the breadth of life experiences, you will not be able to make sense of the depth that you have. So it's the depth and the breadth together that makes complete education. And to achieve that breadth, we call as educating for life, we have a provision called general education. So in all undergraduate programs under my university, 25% of the credits are for general education. In engineering programs, it's 15%, except for engineering. On all other programs, it's 25%. I'm very proud to tell you that before I came here, and that's why it's not in the slide, we our tie-up with EDX got finalized. edx.org, you can visit this website. It's one of the world's largest aggregator of online programs, and a large component of general education will be delivered through EDX platform, which means that our students will actually be able to learn from the very best people from across the world. As I said, you can just visit the edx.org and figure out what they are offering. We have a large bouquet of international collaboration, and most of the time people wonder what will happen about you have international collaboration, how does it benefit me? So we have something called as global immersion, where we have different things called. One option is a semester abroad. So our students can actually go spend a semester in any of these partner universities, take the credits over there. Those credits, when they come back, are counted towards the degree completion requirement, and that's how the student, without wasting any time, can get an international experience while studying with us. And they have not one option but several options, and this list is adding. So we have partner universities in UK, in US, as well as in Europe. We have a strong international visiting faculty. About 20 to 25% of our credits are taught by international visiting faculty. That means that they come, they spend minimum 2 weeks or 3 weeks here, they teach the students, and they go. And we have faculty coming in from all parts of the world, and that's a fact. When you come and visit our campus, you will be able to share more details about this. So international component is also an critical component, and that's about it. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for any questions if you have.